In this presentation, Career Services will provide guidance around how to write a cover letter for an internship or job application. We understand that students start their program with various education and career backgrounds and levels of professional and life experience. No matter where your comfort level is with crafting a cover letter, please know that the Career Services team is here to help. By the end of this video, you'll understand the purpose of a cover letter, the typical components and how to structure them, how to tailor the main content of your letter, and I'll end with some additional resources that are available to you. So let's get started with the purpose of a cover letter. A cover letter, or sometimes referred to as a letter of introduction in K-12 school spaces, serves an important function when applying for internships or jobs. Even if an employer doesn't specifically list a cover letter as an application requirement, we recommend you always include one, and here's why. Your resume, which is almost always required when you apply to an internship or job, tells the reader all about you, your strengths and skills, knowledge, and past experience. Whereas the internship or job posting, along with the employer's website, tells you all about them, what their needs are, what they specialize in, and what's important to them. A common mistake with cover letters is to restate the information found on the resume, but this is repetitive and not adding new value to the reader. A successful cover letter instead will highlight what you bring to the table and will explain how this will bring value to the employer's specific needs. You're connecting the dots for them so they easily understand why they should hire you. And that's what we call tailoring your letter, when you write with a specific reader in mind and address the particular needs of the internship or job you are applying to. I'll go into more detail about how to go about tailoring a cover letter in a few minutes. Now I'll give a quick overview of the key components of a cover letter, and then we'll discuss each one in detail. These components, listed in the order in which they will typically appear in your letter, are your contact information, the employer's information, the date, salutation, an introduction paragraph, your main content paragraphs, a closing paragraph, and finally, a closing salutation. Now let's take a closer look at each component, starting at the top of the cover letter. In the top portion of your letter, you will want to include your contact information. There are two different formats you can go with, one being a traditional business letter format, where your information is aligned along the left side of the page, or you can choose a more modern format, where you use the same header from your resume. It's up to you which one you use, but a plus side of using your resume header is that your documents will have a consistent branding, and your header usually takes up less space than if you use the traditional business letter format. Just like your resume, you'll want to include your name, phone number, and email address. It's up to you if you wish to include your full mailing address or just your city and state. It's customary to include the employer's contact information as well. It shows due diligence on your part if you can identify a specific person to address the letter to. Typically, this would be the person that is listed as the contact in the internship or job posting. If there is not a contact, address it to the supervisor of the role you are applying to. They might not include the specific name of the person in the posting, but if they include their job title, it's likely you can look up their name on the organization's website. If no clues are given, you can always contact the organization and ask who would be best to address your letter to. On your letter, you typically want to include the full person's name that you are addressing the letter to, their job title, their organization's name, and the organization's mailing address. If you are not able to identify a specific recipient, just include the organization's name and mailing address in this section. You'll want to date your letter. We recommend spelling out the month name instead of using an abbreviation or numerical representations. The salutation on the letter is where you include the name of the person you are addressing your letter to. Traditionally, you would include an honorific title with the person's name, such as Ms., capital M, lowercase s, period, Mr., capital M, lowercase r, period, Mix, capital M, lowercase x, period, or Doctor, capital D, lowercase. But we recommend only using an honorific that you have verified the recipient uses. To find this out, you can check to see if the person has a profile on their organization's website, or check their professional social media accounts if they have them. You can also conduct a Google search for articles that have been written about the person. If you're addressing your letter to someone who has earned a doctoral degree, it's professional etiquette to address them as doctor, although some might prefer to be addressed less formally. Without knowing the person's preference, it's best to err on the side of being more professional rather than too casual. If you can't verify which honorific your recipient uses, it's best to leave it off entirely to avoid misgendering and simply address the person in the way they are referenced in your research. In this example, if you couldn't find evidence that Dr. Johnson had a doctorate, your salutation could be Dear Roberta Johnson, and you could end your salutation with a comma or a colon based on your preference. So now we'll transition into discussing the paragraphs of your letter. It's common to struggle with deciding exactly what to write about. The key objective is that you want the reader to come away from reading your document thinking that you are the best person for the role. You might have an inclination to list off all the reasons, but it's actually more effective to focus in on a few of the most important reasons. We recommend highlighting 2 to 3 themes, since the human brain can typically remember up to 3 things with relative ease, and beyond that, our brains can get overloaded and have a hard time recalling all of the details. So, to identify what those 2 to 3 things are, you want to start with doing some research. Through this research, you're trying to get a firm understanding of what the employer is looking for. You don't need to spend a ton of time on this, but see how much you can learn after half an hour and go from there. First, take a look at the internship or job posting. Make a list of the keywords or phrases of all the tasks, skills, or knowledge the employer is wanting you to have, and anything that seems important to them, such as a mission statement or set of values. Look at the organization's website and/or social media presence and continue adding to the list. What strengths of theirs are they highlighting or calling attention to? Once you feel you have a good sense of what's important to the role and to the organization, review the list and make a note of reoccurring items. The organization is repeating these because they are especially important to them. The next step is to go through the list and identify anything that is a strength of yours or that especially resonates with you. Maybe you have direct experience with some of the key tasks or responsibilities of the role, or perhaps you align with one of the organization's key values or are passionate about the mission of their work. This narrowed down version of the list are all of the potential things you could address in your cover letter. Lastly, choose 2 to 3 of the themes that you feel most strongly convey why you are the best fit for the position. Now you're ready to start writing your letter. In the next few slides, you'll see a visual representation of how much space each section typically takes up in a cover letter. But no, this isn't an exact science, and there isn't an exact number of sentences or number of paragraphs you need to have. Do what you feel is right for your circumstance. Just try to keep your document to a maximum of 1 page. The introduction paragraph tends to be relatively short and typically includes at least 4 pieces of information. The title of the role you are applying for and the name of the organization. It's also helpful to include the posting ID number if there was one included in the internship or job description. It's helpful to describe your current role as it relates to the position you're applying for. Granted, the employer will see your resume, so you don't need to regurgitate all of the details about your education background and professional experience, such as I am currently a master's student at the University of Michigan studying education technology with a specific interest in exploring K-12 curriculum design. Lastly, in your introduction, you want to state your thesis statement. This is where you present the 2 to 3 reasons or themes you came up with of why you are the best candidate for the position. Keep it brief since you'll go into detail later. It can sound something like, I would bring a lot to this internship given my experience in X and my passion for Y. You can then structure your main content paragraphs in such a way where you have a paragraph for each of your reasons. If you have 2 reasons, you'd have 2 main content paragraphs as shown. If you have 3 reasons, you'd have 3 main content paragraphs. Keep in mind, this is just one strategy of how to structure your content. You can always adjust based on what works best for your situation. In addition to having a paragraph for each theme, remember to take advantage of your resume. Include all of the relevant details of your experience, knowledge, and strengths there, and only highlight 1 or 2 of your best examples in each of your main paragraphs in your cover letter. As you're providing examples of things you've done in the past or are currently doing, make sure to connect the dots of how it relates to the internship or job opportunity you're applying to. Even if it seems straightforward to you, you don't want to leave it up to the reader's interpretation. Again, make it as easy as possible for them to come away from reading your letter knowing the 2 to 3 reasons they should take you on as an intern or hire you for a job. Your closing paragraph can be pretty short. A few sentences where you restate your thesis. You'll want to tweak the wording a little so it's not the exact same sentence from your introduction paragraph, and then you want to include a thank you of some sort. You could write something like, thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to the possibility of talking further with you about this exciting opportunity. You don't need to state your contact information as you've already provided it above, and you don't need to tell them to reach out if they have any questions, as they will naturally contact you if they wish to interview you. The last component of your letter is your closing salutation. Sincerely, followed by a comma and your name underneath, is a safe choice as it's very common and professional. You could use something similar, such as best regards. You just want to avoid anything that could be interpreted as casual in tone, such as cheers. Now that I've discussed the layout and content of your cover letter, let's go over some formatting guidelines. Just like your resume, it's best to use one font throughout your letter, preferably the same font that you used for your resume. The font type should be easy to read and not overly stylized. Sans serif fonts like Arial or Helvetica are a little easier to read compared to serif fonts like Times New Roman, but if you prefer the look of that, it will be fine. For the font size, it's great if you can use 12 point, but you can go as small as 10 point. Anything smaller than that can be hard to read, and you don't want your reader to feel strained or distracted by their struggle to read your document. A universal rule with cover letters is that they shouldn't be more than a page long and they should be single-spaced. If you're struggling to do this, write your letter first and then see how much you are going over. Before cutting out any content, you can see if you can tweak the formatting a little to get your letter down to 1 page by either reducing the font size, as long as you don't go below 10 point, or slightly reducing the width of your margins. And lastly, make sure you check your document thoroughly for spelling or grammar errors. Double check that you've spelled your recipient's name and their organization's name correctly. After you've done a final 1 or 2 read-throughs yourself, have someone else proofread it. It's very easy to miss errors in our own writing when we've been working on something for an extended period of time. To conclude, I hope this video has been helpful in providing guidance around how you can craft a successful cover letter when applying for an internship or job search. In addition to this video, we encourage you to review the additional resources found within the ES Internship Search Pathway in Edworks. Additionally, you may schedule a one-on-one appointment with a career services advisor if you'd like feedback on a cover letter draft, or you can upload the document to Edworks to receive feedback via email. Please refer to the pathway for details, and make sure you first review all of the resources we have shared and try to apply the strategies we have provided to your draft before seeking feedback. Please don't hesitate to reach out to the Career Services team at soe.careerservices@umich.edu if you have any questions. We wish you the best with your internship search.